Final non-test match of the tour, folks, sees the Lions beat a First Nations and Pasifika 15, 24 points to 19. A pretty closely contested game in the scheme of things. The Lions certainly had a heap of ball, a heap of territory, and a few too many errors for their liking. But let's face it, this is the game. Especially if you were one of the guys who joined the Lions at the very start of the tour, you probably wouldn't want to be playing him, because if you're playing in this one, in all likelihood, you're not going to be there for test 2. But still, you put yourself in the window of the coach, the shop window. Injuries can happen. You still might get a chance just yet. You guys can let me know if you think anybody particularly put their hands up. I feel like Andy Farrell will be looking at a pretty settled squad for test number 2. And for the First Nations Pasifika team, I think they did better than people expected. Even if it isn't Andy Farrell's first choice Lions side, they were predicted to get pretty handily beaten, but it finishes within a score. So entertainment value good all round. We'll go through the key events and stats of the game, and then you guys can let us know your thoughts on how you thought things went. If you want Lions kit, by the way, or Aussie kit, check the links down in the description to both of the British, Irish Lions and Wallabies shops. They've got all kinds of jerseys on, and there's specials and whatnot, especially given the tour is coming to a close, really. Duhan van der Merwe very close early on. Darcy Graham just foot in touch, and it was unfortunate for Darcy Graham because he was looking electric. He went off injured very early and seemed pretty heartbroken, but he gets himself a try later on. Not many guys get, even if it's not a test match, a try for the British and Irish Lions, so he certainly made the most of what limited time he had in the Lions jersey. Bit of handbags on 4 minutes though, because Tristan Riley bangs into him with a pretty high shot, shoulder to shoulder, shoulder to head, enough for a yellow, not for a red. I didn't mean to make that rhyme, but that just came out that way. It is after midnight here, by the way, just FYI. Morgan Turanui, on seeing that yellow card to Tristan Riley going off for review, and if you don't usually get Aussie commentary, Morgan Turanui is usually the voice of reason amongst some pretty one-eyed Aussie commentary team members. Morgan Turanui was not happy because he started going on and on about the match at the weekend, test match number 1, and all the calls that the Lions didn't get pinged for similar incidents. He was calling it TMO bingo, and it was just very uncharacteristic from him. He's usually very level-headed, but he certainly had a bone to pick with the officials based on the officiating today, and then comparing it to last Lions game officiating. But that is by the by. Down to 14 men, the First Nations Pasifika team, and they get punished. Finn Smith with a chip over for Osborne for the first one, and then they're getting some wide ball. They were playing some nice rugby when it clicked, the Lions, especially first 20 minutes, just looking to exploit the width. I think it was it Finn Smith with the really wide pass out to Darcy Graham? They got it wide real quick from an attacking line-out move. 14-0. It looks like all those predictions about this one being a flogging are going to come true. But no, I mean, Darcy Graham, as I said, has to go off after about 15 minutes. I felt really bad for him. And then, not too long later, the man who come back from his yellow card, Tristan Riley, he gets them an intercept try, the First Nations Pasifika team. One-handed intercept. He might have been in hot water if he hadn't have caught it, but he caught it. It was Kinghorn's pass. Maybe Kinghorn didn't do his competition with Hugo Keenan for fullback any favours, especially in the first half. He dropped a few balls. But, yeah, intercept pass for Riley as the Lions try to spin it wide, and suddenly the First Nations team is on the board. 7 points to 14. Then they get themselves a scrum penalty. They get some, territory and possession, which they have been a little bit starved of. And Sedu Uru was able to power over from close range. What? We're 14 points apiece. I thought this was going to be a flogging. And there's also a yellow card for James Ryan as well, for flopping around at the breakdown at the same time. So, yeah, it's a rough one for the Lions to go from 14-0 up to suddenly back to 14 apiece. That all started from Finn Smith, and he had a couple of kicking errors in this game. He just kicked the kickoff too deep after the intercept try. Because he kicked it into the end goal, the Lions had to have a scrum on halfway, which conceded the penalty, which gave them the field position, which led to the try. So all goes back to that one mucked up kick, sadly for him. There was another big First Nations Pasifika scrum penalty, which resulted in some handbags. There was a fair bit of handbags in this game, especially in the first half as well. Fiery one for a kind of non-test match. Lions did have more chances in the 22 for what's, their half was worth, but couldn't convert any. So, yeah, Debrasini even had an intercept before halftime, but he is not the fastest player and couldn't find a pace man to convert it for the First Nations Pacifica side. So, yeah, halftime, she's pretty tight. The line breaks is 5-3 to the Lions. They've also had 11 turnovers conceded to 6. They've been dropping some ball. I think Finn Smith with the kicking errors will contribute to that as well. Kinghorn had 4 of them. That's what I'm talking about. Osborne had a couple as well. One ball he kind of touched before it went into touch. But territory is 66-34 and possession's 58-42. So you might have thought they would have done more, but guys like Charlie Gamble, he'd already had 10 tackles by halftime, so he was a busy guy. Second half doesn't start well again for First Nations Pacifica, or conversely, the Lions start really well because they're forcing penalties to be conceded. The Lions break down more penalties. They get that ball wide again. I think it's Kinghorn with a nicer pass this time, and it is 19 points to 14 with the next Osborne try, so it's pretty kind of back to what you expected from the Lions. More like what we saw in the first half of the game. There's another TMO intervention, which chalks off a Lions try for a knock-on to Josh van der Fleer. To be fair, there was a couple of knock-ons in that one. The fact that it needed a TMO call was a little bit of an indictment on the refs or the officiating team not seeing a couple of balls seemingly lost forward live. But hey, they checked it. First Nations Pacifica gets a yellow card warning. Too many penalties conceded. The Lions go 9+ phases. Still can't score. Probably should have scored. They were that bloody close. On the 63rd minute, they've had to work for it. They do finally get it. Line out. They get the hands going. The final few passes, I think it's Smith. It's Finn to Owen Farrell to Duhan. Try time 24-14. Looking like that's probably a comfortable enough lead. But despite only having 22% territory in the second half, the First Nations side did get themselves a 22 entry at last. And they did get themselves a try through Leota to give us something of a grandstanding finish. The game should have been done, though, to be honest, because the Lions, I think it was Pollock, won a breakdown with a minute to go. But they lost their line out, which gave First Nations Pacifica a chance to run at them, but then they kicked it, which was probably not the option when the Hooters already gone. Unless it's a real surefire thing or you're right on your own goal line. I feel like keep the ball in hand is the play there. But hey, the Lions kicked the ball out, and that is the game. So, yeah, their line out was a bit wobbly in the second half, to be fair. The Lions, it kept the other guys in the game. Been saying First Nations Pacifica a lot. It's a bit of a mouthful. Possession and territory finishes 53-47, so a bit tighter. Territory still 66-34. So they were playing in the right area of the field, the Lions, but they also had 19 turnovers conceded to 9. But part of that's the style of the game they were playing, man. They offloaded 13 times to 1. So, yeah, they were there to play some rugby. They had 10 clean breaks to 5, 17 defenders beaten to 11. So I still think they're pretty good value for the win. But they certainly missed some chances. But you've got to give credit to the First Nations Pacifica guys for at times making those tackles, going through those phases, winning the turnovers. So able to keep them off the scoreboard as much as they could. And then that line out, they missed 4 of them, the Lions, compared to the First Nations team. They've only been together a short time for one. It makes that Aussie-New Zealand team look like rubbish, doesn't it? Again, albeit this is the team which is not going to play in the test match for the Lions. So we do need to take that into consideration. But still, better than expected from them. Charlie Gamble on the losing side gets man of the match. 17 from 17 tackles. Massive defensive shift from him. Josh van der Fleer made 15 from 16 for the Lions. Kinghorn had 100+ meters. 4 defenders beaten, but also 4 turnovers conceded in the first half, as I mentioned. Osborne, a couple of tries from him. Some line breaks. Farrell as captain. A couple of try assists from him. So, yeah, 24-19. That is the final non-test match. We look forward to test match number 2. With a much changed Lions side on the weekend. And yeah, fingers crossed for a tour point of view, the Wallabies are able to put in a good shift and show some heart like these guys showed for this First Nations Pacifica team. But you guys let us know your thoughts on the game. As I said, check out Lions store down in the description if you want gear. And I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.